Hello, my name is Alex and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Sofia Coppola's 2013 film, The Bling Ring. Now this film is often taken at face value as a fun, true crime story of teens stealing from celebrity homes. The film shows how obsessed these teens are with the lives of the rich and famous and how they try to steal their way into their lives. The film has a tongue-in-cheek tone that makes it seem light and fun and without any real substance. Coppola plays into the audience's fascination with glamour, wealth, and celebrity by inviting us to gaze on the houses of these celebrities. She uses the actual closet of Paris Hilton, which shows that the film will not be a damning indictment of celebrity culture, which makes sense given Coppola's life story. Coppola's detached directorial style make it easy for us to mirror our own beliefs onto the characters of the film. Is the film a critique of late capitalist consumption and how the displays of unfathomable wealth by celebrities have led us down the path to increasing narcissism and even criminal activity? Or is the film leaning into these crimes and asking us to wonder who wouldn't indulge in these crimes if they could? Most interpretations focus on these questions, and yet I'm here to talk about some different aspects of the film. It might be shocking that there's something deeper to discuss in this film about young women stealing fabulous clothing. Yet, while the film has a detached and ironic style, the characters within it reveal human themes that are worthy of discussion. Due to her great performance, celebrity status, and the infamous reality TV appearance of her real-life counterpart, Emma Watson's performance as Nikki Moore has been the focus of most critical discussion of the film's performances and characters. However, the two characters who I want to focus on today are Israel Broussard as Mark Hall and Katie Chang as Rebecca Ahn. These two characters are the clear leads of the film and drive the majority of the plot. They are also uniquely positioned in the filmography of Coppola, who has focused almost exclusively on straight white women and men as protagonists throughout the rest of her films. The only other exception seems to be Rashida Jones in On the Rocks. Mark is a queer man and Rebecca is an Asian woman. The supporting members of the Bling Ring do consist of straight white girls, but centering Mark and Rebecca has always seemed like an interesting choice to me. While Rebecca's racial identity feels less integral to the film's plot and themes, it does present an interesting opportunity to examine Coppola's approach to depicting race on film. It also allows us to talk about issues of sexual identity. Specifically, the relationship between Mark and Rebecca reflects many of the friendships I formed with straight girls in my teen years. It is also an interesting entry in the canon of GBF cinema, also known as the gay best friend. So while we will spend today talking about the themes of this film, it is also a super personal video for me, as this is one of the few films that directly speaks to my youth in a way that I'm still shocked was put on film, and especially by one of my favorite directors. So basically,
they got me, gal!
While the film was released in 2013, it depicts crimes that took place in the 2008 to 2009 school year. I was in 11th grade at the time, and I can remember excitedly watching Gossip Girl, reading celebrity gossip sites, and my continuous love for Lindsay Lohan. I was an avid reader of Teen Vogue at the time, and only partially because it was prominently featured on The Hills. Thus, I can easily relate to Mark and Rebecca's friendship. They bond over their shared love for fashion, celebrities, and they both dream of escaping to New York to escape their suburban existence, even if that suburb still keeps them in Los Angeles, so I don't know what they're trying to escape from. Their love for celebrities and designer brands guide much of their discussion, something that has only continued to grow in our culture through social media and influencers. The film's depiction of celebrity feels like it comes at a transitional time as Paris Hilton is losing her centrality in celebrity culture, and we're all moving on to her best friend, Kim Kardashian. Hilton's involvement in the film is one of the most interesting aspects of it. She granted Coppola full access to her house and closet, and it features prominently in the film as their go-to spot to rob. Thus, the film helps to further the image of Hilton as somebody with a house worth stealing from, and helps us to participate in the fantasy of wealth and consumption that led to these very crimes. The film also consistently emphasizes how the internet is used to consume celebrity gossip and find the homes of those who will be robbed. The film even uses footage of websites and videos from sites like socialitelife.com to highlight the different celebrities that are the aims of these crimes. However, Mark and Rebecca's early bonding also happens over a gossip magazine's fashion pages, which shows this as a transitional time in celebrity media. This emphasis on celebrity requires us to talk about class. The film was released in 2013, which was an important year for filmic depictions of capitalism, specifically reflecting the period of late capitalism. Yes, late capitalism is actually an academic term and not just another buzzword that you hear on the internet all the time. Late capitalism is a term in cultural studies that is associated with the work of Frederick Jameson and his approach to postmodernism. Postmodernism in all artistic realms is characterized by Jameson by the breakdown of distinctions between high culture and mass culture. The Bling Ring definitely fits the characteristics of a postmodern film by using art house cinema techniques like the slow zoom that accompanies the objective filming of the robbery of Audrina Patridge's house and applies them to mass culture, aka celebrity culture. The film uses montages of paparazzi footage from gossip websites, and the celebrities' closets to continue the music video aesthetic that is present throughout Coppola's work, notably in Marie Antoinette. While the aesthetic innovations of postmodernism can be exciting on an artistic level, we also must keep in mind, in Jameson's words, quote, that this whole global yet American postmodern culture is the internal and superstructural expression of a whole new wave of American military and economic domination throughout the world. In this sense, as through class history, the underside of culture is blood, torture, death, and terror. The films of 2013, including Spring Breakers, The Great Gatsby, Pain and Glory, The Wolf of Wall Street, and of course, The Bling Ring, were all made as clear reflections of the 2008 financial crisis and the Occupy Wall Street movement that followed. Yet they all invite us to enjoy the spectacle of wealth while expecting us to see the level of greed and consumption on screen as somewhat perverse and dangerous. Thus, as an audience, we get to have our cake and eat it too. Jameson reminds us that while we are enjoying our cake, there is real violence that underscores the capitalist system whose exploits we are enjoying. Is that going to stop me from enjoying this film? No, but it is important to always keep a structuralist, Marxist critique in mind when consuming popular culture, at least in my opinion. Coppola's work centers the experiences of people with class privilege. However, she rarely delves into issues of race, if at all. This has often been a critique of Coppola's work. However, when people offer this critique, I rarely see people mention the Bling Ring's Asian co-lead. Since Coppola does not usually foreground racialized characters, it seems worthy to ask why she did in this instance. The easy answer is that the real-life counterpart to Rebecca was an Asian woman. However, that has not ever stopped Coppola before. One of the other main characters in the Bling Ring was an undocumented Latina woman, and that character is completely cut out of the film, with her famous crawling through doggy doors done by Sam and Nikki's younger sister, Emily. This decision was criticized at the time for whitewashing the story, an accusation that Coppola would face again on her next film, The Beguiled. Coppola's adaptation removed the character of a black slave and cast Kirsten Dunst in the role of a biracial woman. Yeah. However, as Angelica Jade Bastien argued in Vulture, by excluding these characters and keeping her focus on the white Southern belles at the center of the story, the film acts as an indictment of white womanhood as it is constructed in Coppola's films. Thus, it would have been on par for Coppola to whitewash Rebecca's character in the film. Yet the reason I think that she doesn't do this is because Coppola is feeding into a different racist trope, that of the model minority. Rebecca's race is the only element of her character that separates her from the other members of the Bling Ring. They all bond over their love for celebrities, partying, rebelling against their absent or overbearing parents, and, of course, fashion. However, her racial identity is never brought up within the film, and exists as subtext in the same way that the whiteness of the other characters does. Thus, Rebecca's Asian identity is seen as not affecting her relationship to privilege due to her economic status within the film. An intersectional approach would obviously highlight that being racialized would mean that Rebecca would still face forms of discrimination that other characters do not. However, this seems outside of Coppola's purview, and implies as long as the characters entertain a certain class privilege, Coppola is comfortable depicting them. When asked about choosing to cut the slave character from The Beguiled, Coppola stated, "I didn't want to brush over such an important topic in a light way. Young girls watch my films, and this was not the depiction of African American character I would want to show them." Rebecca seems to be a depiction of an Asian teen that Coppola is comfortable with depicting. Thus, we can see that her films are mostly concerned with femininity's relationship with class and actively avoids interrogating issues of race. Rebecca's Asian identity is swept under the rug as insignificant by the film in the ways that Asian American issues have often been swept under the rug through the myth of the model minority. However, there is one aspect of the film where we can see race playing a clear role. Alyssa Rosenberg pointed out that the film uses hip-hop to underscore scenes of teens during or after their crimes. The characters even rap along to these songs in their cars throughout the film. Rosenberg views this use of hip-hop as creating a juxtaposition between the teens in the film, who do not understand the consequences of their actions, and the negative life consequences that led to the creation of this music for the rappers who made it. However, I think we can also broadly see the use of this music as representing the common appropriation of stereotypes of black criminality by white youth. While from an outside vantage point this lip-syncing might seem an absurd juxtaposition with the privileged lives of these characters, from my perspective that seems pretty natural to these characters. It reminds me of being in my late teens at a suburban party in a basement where people were rapping along to Nicki Minaj's super bass, including the N-word, in front of my black best friend. So that was awkward, of course. Hip-hop and rap have become common signifiers of coolness and authenticity for suburban white teenagers since at least the 1990s. Years of teaching Jackson Katz's Tough Guys 2 has made me super familiar with the scene from I Can't Hardly Wait that mocks this appropriation. You can extend this appropriation for the purposes of authenticity and coolness to the ways that also represents a rebellion against the constraints of teenage white identity. The teens in the Bling Ring do their crimes because they are enshrined in a culture that values wealth and celebrity above all else. But they also do it out of boredom. They want to rebel against their parents, as all teenagers seem to want to do. The gangsta lifestyle that is associated with hip-hop becomes appropriated as a way of rebelling against their own identity. Associating the lip-syncing to hip-hop so directly with their crimes helps us to see how they are taking on this identity. Rosenberg also highlights the scene where we can see this appropriation most clearly, which happens when Sam steals a gun from Megan Fox's house and wields it around without thinking of the life and death consequences of this weapon. This part of the film most clearly recalls Spring Breakers, even though the films have pretty different tones. That one is a much more direct commentary on how white people appropriate hip-hop and criminality as a way of rebelling against authority. However, in these moments in the Bling Ring highlight a similar part of white privilege. Finally, let's talk about the aspect of the Bling Ring that keeps me rewatching it. When you first approach the Bling Ring, it might seem an odd choice for Mark to be our protagonist. I believe I was shocked when I watched the movie in theaters. Coppola's films are associated with a feminine sensibility and often have female protagonists. The Bling Ring follows the model set by Lost in Translation and Somewhere, where we're following a relationship between a man and a woman, and you can even see it linked in ways to the outside male perspective on teenage femininity seen in the Virgin Suicides. However, Mark's queerness marks something new for Coppola's filmography. The gay man and straight woman dynamic has been heavily featured in popular culture over the last 50 years, I'd say most notably in Will and Grace, but there are many other examples, of course. The concept is so common that it has come to be known by its own acronym, the GBF, or the Gay Best Friend. The gay best friend is sassy, knowledgeable about fashion, desexualized yet overtly sexual, flamboyant, and always there to hear the romantic troubles of their straight female friends. Every stereotype is based in some level of truth, as we can see the stereotype lived out over 15 years of The Real Housewives, with Andy Cohen acting as the ultimate GBF. Luckily, the Bling Ring is a strong example of popular culture in the 2010s that actually attempted to move beyond this trope rather than reinforce it, and offers us a much more complex look at the friendships between straight women and gay men. While there's a lot to look at and take in within the film, I argue the element of the film is central to its plot in a way that I haven't ever really seen fully addressed in discussions of this film. Maybe I'm not looking hard enough. The centrality of this relationship can be seen throughout the film, as Mark and Rebecca's meeting is what starts the action. Rebecca drives the majority of desire for these robberies, and Mark is the one who plans and executes them, and the fall of their friendship frames the ending of the film. For example, the second act culminates with the conquest of Lindsay Lohan's home, who is Rebecca's ultimate idol. Girl, same. This moment highlights that she has fully gained the life that she desired. It also marks the downfall of their operation when Lohan gives the security footage from the robbery to the police. Also leads to the last time Mark and Rebecca will see each other before court. Mark's testimony structures the final act of the film, with memorable interjections from Watson's hilarious performance as Nikki. The scenes with Nikki most clearly satirize the cult of personality and narcissism that characterizes modern celebrity culture. In this scene, we can see that Rebecca abandons Mark when the law comes knocking and allows him to take the fall. While she obviously will also face consequences, the film has taken us through Mark's perspective, so the feeling of abandonment and resentment towards Rebecca is what we feel throughout this third act. The depiction of Rebecca as the true criminal mastermind of the operation is found in the next scene, as she actively lies to police about her involvement, and then once caught divulges all the details to save her own ass. We see Rebecca deleting Mark off of Facebook. Mark also refers to America having a sick fascination with a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing, which shows that he compares their relationship to that of the romantic relationship between Bonnie and Clyde, and thus demonstrates the sort of depth to this kind of relationship. It's just as valid of a male-female pairing as an actual romantic relationship. Later, when Mark and Rebecca get to court, she avoids eye contact, and in the end, they get the same jail time. Early in the film, after their first time hanging out, we hear Mark's testimony to a reporter for the first time. This tips us off that things are going to be going badly later on. Side note, but Mark's discussion of feeling ugly and not looking like an A-list kind of guy is again further relatable content for my life, at least back when I identified with being a guy. It also shows the focus on appearance that is key to the film's themes. We value a certain material, aesthetic, appearance, something that I'm sure you all know social media and influencer culture has furthered over the subsequent years. This voiceover from Mark describes so many of the dynamics between the gay best friend and their female friends. Gay men are prone to idolize the women in their lives, whether it be pop divas, actresses, their female friends, or even their mothers. These women have access to the femininity that many gay men want access to but cannot attain. Often gay men turn to drag for safe access to this femininity. My perspective on this has changed even more due to my own changing gender identity. As a non-binary femme, I've finally chosen to embrace the femininity that I've always been drawn to, especially in terms of aesthetics. Now, femininity is not solely about aesthetics and has certain characteristics within Western society, such as kindness, compassion, being nurturing, a softness, and sensitivity. In my own life, these qualities have always been something that I valued, as well as having a desire to dress in a more feminine way. However, before embracing my own non-binary identity, I always felt that accessing femininity was almost impossible for me to do. Did I access it in my own ways, carrying a purse, even when I fully identified as a boy? Yes, but it wasn't without social repercussions and criticism. Straight women friends allowed me access to femininity, allowed me to share their interest in feminine pursuits like dolls, pop music, shopping, clothing, makeup, and various films that got labeled chick flicks. Some of these friendships have stayed foundational in my life, including my current romantic relationship with one of my best friends from my childhood. However, the Bling Ring always reminds me of the downfall of so many of these other friendships that I had developed in my life. The heteronormative structure of society aims for us to form heterosexual partnerships and leads to gay and straight people living in different spaces, which is partially due to homosocial spaces where men and women operate in separate spaces unless they are trying to attract each other. Friendship between gay men and straight women appears to break through these borders, but can actually work to reinforce them. This is how gay men can easily fall into the aspect of the GBF trope when they are only there to listen to the romantic troubles of their straight friends. Of course, this was a common part of my experience, and the aspect of this experience that most highlights the two spheres that gay and straight people live in under heteronormativity. While I would listen to my female friends as they talked about crushes and boyfriends, there was always a clear understanding to me that my own crushes could be fun pieces of gossip, but they would never be taken seriously. I've always been a very emotional person, even if not outwardly so, meaning that crushes formed a central part of my identity at this time. And yet, I felt so constrained talking about them. Now, 2000's suburban life was not filled with a lot of gay boys to thirst over, so yes, a lot of these crushes were on straight boys. I assume this was a way of protecting me and keeping me safe, but it always felt dismissive to me, like you will never be enough, and your feelings are invalid. I realize now that this hurt me so deeply because, identifying as a non-binary femme now, I don't see that there was any difference between me and them. We had a similar feminine gender identity, so why could I not like the people that they liked? I was a femme person attracted to men, so why wouldn't they like me? And even if they didn't like me, why couldn't I crush on them in an open way? It's not like all of my straight female friends dated every boy they had a crush on. So my gender identity makes me unaware if this is a universal problem for gay men, but I think it does show that we view straight people and gay people to exist separately without the ability for cross-pollination between these worlds. I think that's why we have such a clear issue with bi, pan, or queer people in our society who can't easily be labeled as gay or straight and fit into specific boxes with specific romantic options. The film mainly avoids the shared interest in men between Mark and Rebecca, as the only mention of Mark's interest in men is through the initial robbery that bonds them at the house of a friend of Mark's that he's been hooking up with. Relationships between gay men and straight women can complicate these spheres of gender and sexuality, as I've personally experienced when, as a gay man, I started dating my childhood straight female best friend. Since the beginning of our relationship, we've both been exploring our sexuality and gender identities in different ways, which helps to explain our relationship, I'd say, but it does also demonstrate that these friendships can break between boundaries of the gay and straight worlds. These relationships, even in their most desexualized, fetishistic, and least radical forms, do challenge the heterosexual matrix that forms the basis for heteronormativity, as men and women are forming friendships that are not meant to form romantic relationships and exist outside of acceptable homosocial spaces. The tension between straight women and the queer community has escalated in recent years with the current discourse on bachelorette parties at gay bars. For straight women, these become almost anthropological in their foray into a foreign land, further emphasizing the difference between straight and gay worlds. What this discourse points to is the ways in which straight women can further the oppression of all queer people, and do hold power over these groups. We've seen similar discourses of the privilege that particularly white queer men hold over women, which further highlights the tension between these groups. As the film shows, straight women and queer men often have similar interests, and both have an interest in femininity to some degree, but their different positions in regards to the heterosexual matrix complicate these matters. In an ideal form of allyship, both groups can use their relationship to power to help out the other. These reciprocal allied relationships are fundamental to deconstructing the system of cis-normative, heteronormative patriarchy that negatively affects all groups, even the straight men it claims to benefit. However, due to their marginalization, it can be hard for straight women and queer folks to see the privilege that they have, and especially see the ways in which they can further the oppression of the opposite group. This video had to be my first video because it almost functions for me as a form of therapy. As I'm working through and trying to understand my own gender identity, I'm working through a lot of my own memories of what it was like to grow up and to try to identify who I was in this world. To me, the Bling Ring reflects the pain that straight women can bring to queer men. When I see Rebecca Vandenmark at the end of the film and he goes off to a men's jail all by himself, I feel the way that throughout my life straight female friends of mine have left me out to dry. As a queer femme person, you always assume that straight men are the people that you should fear. That is the rhetoric that's put forward. And yet, as I've reflected and grown, I come to think of the ways that straight women have also caused me a lot of harm in my own life. So while I've certainly experienced emotional pain from straight men, I think back to one of the last times I ever hung out with a group of straight women friends that I had. It was a friend's birthday party who I was not super close with, but had developed a friendship with both at school and through online spaces. At this time, I used Tumblr as sort of a diary where I would write down all of my emotions and feelings. It's what we did in the early 2010s. And as I did this, I gained friendship with people who were nearby, who seemingly enjoyed to read my experiences as I enjoyed reading about their lives as well. So as I went to this birthday party filled with friends that I had made in this way, I had talked to many of these girls about the boys I had liked. And I think I'm sure I had mentioned at this point to them that I had a crush on this one specific boy. He was the first boy I ever had a crush on. Not who made me realize I was gay, but the first time I ever felt that in real life. And these girls were friends with this boy, and of course decided that on this birthday opportunity, they would set up the birthday girl with this boy. I laughed it off and tried to engage in the fun of the whole matter, but it felt like such a betrayal to me. You've sat there and read my thoughts, my feelings about these boys, specifically about this one as well, and yet you dangle in front of me again that I will never be enough for this boy. Which is fine at this point. We're over that situation of it. But the sense that friends that I had were not there for me, that they did not take me seriously, was just kind of devastating to me. As we went to the bar, where I was, I believe, the only queer person, at least that I could tell, I sort of sat there and tried to avoid watching as my friend flirted with this guy that I liked. Which really was not an uncommon experience in my life. Eventually, I just sort of wandered around downtown, where I didn't really know where I was going until I got to the bus stop, and then took the bus all the way back home, and I rarely saw those girls after that. Some of them I still interacted with, some not as much. And while that was natural, I don't think that that night was a coincidence that it was one of the last times I saw them. To me, that was such a devastating betrayal to take all those feelings that I'd shared and to shove them back in my face and say, you will never be good enough. We don't take you seriously. Your queer feelings are just fun gossip and not something to actually be taken seriously in our lives. We will go on to get married and live in the suburbs, and you will go on to be a freak in this world. And it makes sense. In the early 2010s, there was not a lot of queer representation, so my experiences would be fun gossip, even though they weren't really experiences, but just feelings. And as I watch the Bling Ring, I look at Mark coming to this new community, trying to find friendship and some sort of happiness with the people around him, and by the end of the film ending up even more alone than before. Of course, doing all those crimes probably didn't help, but despite this sort of painful feeling that the film gives me, I still come back to it to enjoy the feminine excess of it all and imagine a teenage life that I didn't get to experience, where glamour and femininity and friendship didn't have to be so fraught. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!